Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
He's alive!
Welcome to where the weird ones are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is with Valerie Lofaso. She's a phenomenal person. I really, really adore her. She's so nice and just my kind of person. She's lives in New Hampshire, grew up in New Hampshire, lives right over the border, like 30-40 minutes away from me. So it's pretty cool when I get to talk to somebody that is so close. So, but she's kind of has a big list of things. She's an empathic medium. She's a paranormal investigator. She's a ufologist. And she is an author. So she's authored a fictional book series called A Tangled Web of Friends. It's geared towards young adults, but if you're interested, go check it out. I believe she said they're on Amazon. But she's got a wild story. First, an inappropriate entity, ghost, spirit, whatever you want to call it. That freaked her out, and honestly, I don't blame her. It would have freaked me out. And when she was a young girl, her and her father were taken aboard an alien aircraft, and her experience was positive. So yeah, she has interesting stories. The Button Factory is definitely an interesting one. So, but I hope you guys all enjoy Valerie's stories, and I hope you show her some love, and check out her books, and come see her at speaking events and stuff. And I just found out, I think she's vending. I don't know if she is speaking or not, but she is going to be at 40 and Fest right here in Sanford, Maine. So if you're in the area, come check her out. I will also be there. It's June 8th, Sanford, Maine, Memorial Gym. I will be vending, so if you're in the area of Southern Maine, Eastern New Hampshire, or whatever, or even Mass, because Mass is probably like an hour away. I think the border of Massachusetts is an hour away from Sanford. but yeah, come check us out. Also, I will be vending at Encounter Quest in Hamlet, North Carolina. So if you're in that area, we'd love to see you. That is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., one or the other. But it's in Hamlet, North Carolina. There's a bunch of sweet ass fucking speakers. Ron Moorhead's a special guest, and yeah, it should be a good time. Should be a lovely, lovely, lovely time. Anyways, with that being said, I hope you guys are having a good day, good night, whatever time you're listening to this. And Please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Leave a rating and review. I would greatly appreciate it. If you do leave a review, if the app allows it, whatever app you're listening to, I will read it on here in the intro. Also, next Tuesday is Conspiracy Tuesday 8 will be coming out exclusively on Patreon. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to Weirdos Only on Patreon and become a member today. That is where you get a free coffee mug, you get early access to the show. So like this episode will be posted the day before it's out to the public, or sometimes even 2 days with these episodes, depending on how fast I produce them. And then you get Conspiracy Tuesdays. Conspiracy Tuesdays are exclusively Patreon episodes now. Story time, which is a segment of me telling a story of like true crime, ghost stories, real telling of ghost stories and cryptid encounters, and stuff like that. Just telling it in a story form. So this coming Tuesday, it's my first exclusive Patreon episode. So I hope you guys check it out. David Down the Rabbit Hole is on there. Also, if you are interested in some sick ass threads, dude, fucking go to deeperdown.store and check that shit out. He's got some cool AI inspired art that is on t-shirts, flip flops, freaking tote bags, hats, pretty much. I mean, cups, I believe, like tumblers and shit. So yeah, go check it out. Show him some love. I don't know if you at checkout use the coupon code Kevin's Weird 18 and get 18% off. We got Amanda from One Nothing. If you don't know, if you haven't heard of One Nothing podcast, then you're fucking living in a cave or something. But you should go check her podcast out. She also has a Patreon. You should subscribe. And David's the co-host, so they're amazing people. And then we have Frankie, who is one of the hosts of The Haunted and The Strange. You should check out that podcast if you haven't yet already. So with those three lovely people, we got into some interesting things. So if you're into conspiracies and whatnot, like if you're conspiratorial minded, you don't have to subscribe to the Patreon. I'm just saying. So I hope you guys enjoy today's episode with Valerie. So let's get into it, shall we?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Weird. Get weird.
What's up, party people? I just want to thank everybody for listening in for another episode of my voice. Today I have Valerie. I might butcher the last name, but Lofaso.
Pretty close.
Close. All right. So, if you don't mind, just let everybody that has decided to listen today, who you are, and what it is you do.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. So my name is Valerie Lofaso, and I am an empathic medium and I'm an author. I'm also a paranormal investigator and researcher on top of it all, as so many of us end up being in this field. And yeah, I've been doing this work for, different parts of it for, a couple decades now.
Nice, nice. So I wanted to talk to you about your book series and what inspired you to, first of all, start writing and to specifically write that series.
Sure. So my book series is called The Tangled Web of Friends, and I currently have 4 books in the series out. They are young adult paranormal fiction, technically. However, I'm fairly certain I have a lot more adult readers than I do actual young adult readers. I have people, as old as 80, 85 years old reading my books. So,
Oh, wow.
they're they have an appeal to all ages, is the way I like to describe them, because they're not just ghost stories, they're relationship stories. And even though the main 4 characters are teenagers, I look at it as you're either going to be a teenager, you are a teenager, or you've been a teenager. So you can relate on some level to what they're going through. Or if you haven't been a teenager yet, you're looking forward to going through what they're going through, maybe. So I started writing the series, the first book, probably in the early 2000s. I've been writing pretty much my entire life. I started entering writing contests when I was in elementary school. I just loved
Oh,
everything
wow.
about books and writing. And I've been fascinated with the paranormal and the weird stories pretty much as long as I've been writing as well. And my fascination for the paranormal never went away as I grew up. I started, researching more about it. I would watch every single TV show. I would, try to read every single book I could get my hands on. And when I really started getting serious about writing, I decided the best way to go, to start at least, was to blend my love of paranormal and love of writing together, because it just felt right for me. And so that's how it got started. I'm a very intuitive writer, so I tend to let the stories and the characters come to me intuitively, and that is how the first book started. I tend to meditate and ask for a story to come, and I kind of write it with my intuition in my head first, and then start putting it, on paper or on the computer, technically.
Yeah. So do you ever like draw inspiration for either like a part of the story or maybe even like the entire story like when you're listening to music at all? Because I will say that I came up with like a whole entire storyline for a book off of music, like just a couple handful of songs. Um, and I just kind of like acted like this might sound silly to some people, but like I acted like I was envisioning it like a movie, you know, so when the music was playing, like the action scenes were happening with the music or whatever, you know, things like that. And I was just curious if that is like something that you know you experience too when you're trying to write a book.
Yeah, music is definitely inspirational on many levels, from, just maybe a certain lyric will hit a right way, and I'll say that's what that character is experiencing, and it will help me to kind of translate that.
Mm.
In the 4th book in the series, the main character is struggling with her relationship with her father, and her father brought music into her life. And when they're all sitting around a fire, she's playing the guitar and singing, and somebody asks for True Colors, which is a song that has a lot of meaning for her and her father. So that kind of, sets the tone for what they're going through. I think adds a layer to what they're doing. So I definitely utilize music a lot.
Okay. And what is like the basis of the series? Like, what is it based on?
Yeah, so it starts out with the main character. Her name is Josie. She is adopted and she is a Native American, and the characters all live in New Hampshire. And she is forced to go on a summer camp with people she doesn't know on a hike in the woods in Maine. They're near Mount Katahdin in Maine for the
Nice.
hike. She ends up hurting herself, and all of a sudden she can talk to ghosts. And so the series then follows her as she manages the friendships with the people that she met on the hike and trying to deal with the ability now to speak with ghosts and how it just affects everybody around her. And she becomes very close with three other people on the hike, and they're the ones that move through the entire series together. They grow together, they experience all kinds of paranormal things together, but there's a lot of real relationship with living and dead people that goes on in the stories.
Oh, nice. And that actually sounds really interesting. I might want to read them. Actually, I should probably read them anyway, just because I love reading books and I like to support the people that I have on the show. But with that, where can people find, your books?
So the best place is online. They are available in print on any online bookseller, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much anyone that has
Nice.
online books, you can get it through them. And it is in ebook. All four are in ebook for Kindle and Nook.
Nice. That's awesome. Have you ever been approached about doing Audible at all? Because I hear that's like a big thing right now.
Yeah, I would, but it's very costly to do
Is it?
Audible, and I do not have the money or the equipment to do it myself. So
I
it's not
gotcha.
happening yet, but hopefully down the road, I would love to do that. I've had a
Okay.
lot of people ask me for the audiobook version, so there is a need out there.
Yeah, it's all the people that don't want to strain their eyeballs, I guess. Well, uh, like, 'cause for work, like, I drive all day long, so I'm driving
Hmm.
10, 12 hours, sometimes even 14, the 14 is very rare now. Um, but I love reading books, and I try to find some books on audio just so I could listen to them rather. I think um I read a couple like Bible stuff just through Audible, like the Book of Enoch, and then there was another book that I did through Audible. But yeah, I listen to like podcasts all day long, and the radio's just overplayed. Obviously, everybody knows that at this point. um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
audiobook
Audible would
is
be good for you.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely great for people like you who have long commutes or are in the car a lot. And I also have some good friends who, have ADHD and they find listening to books easier than reading books. They want to read, but focusing is a challenge. So listening for them is a lot easier. So I would love to broaden my audience in that way, definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I never heard of these creatures before in my entire life. Nomar has turned me on to so many like different avenues and kind of like opened my mind to a lot of things in our own area that I didn't even realize just in talking with him and reading his books um, and all that. And then, so I'm really happy that he reached out to me to tell me about you, and we were able to, meet like this. So, um, I was wondering, what is, what is, the story behind the dairy fairies?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I grew up in Derry my whole entire life and never heard of this story until, was it 2022 when I was researching for a lecture. But the
Oh.
story goes, it was, I believe, in the early 1950s, a man went out into his woods to chop down a Christmas tree, because you did that back then. You didn't necessarily go to a tree lot, you could go into your backyard. And while he was out there, he encountered, he felt eyes on him. So he's looking to see, why am I feeling this? Probably assuming it could be an animal. And he sees a small, gray, wrinkly creature with floppy ears and big feet. And they stare at each other for a while, and he's just thinking, nobody's going to believe me. So he actually tries to capture it, and he tries to jump on the creature to capture it, and the creature screams and runs away.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that's all we know of this one encounter. He did end up, I believe, speaking with a researcher who also worked with Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh.
But he didn't talk, that happened many years later. He didn't talk about it for a very long time to anybody other than family.
Yeah. But I feel like that's what happens with a lot of these stories. I don't know why my ring light just shut off. I charged that last night. Um,
It's
but
paranormal.
also I will say really quick, my dog got up while I was waiting for you to come on. Well, and then I had to go to the bathroom, but she got up and went to the doorway and was just staring into my son's bedroom, and I was like, "Don't even start. If you're here and you're negative, I want you out of this house. Go away."
Yep.
But back to the dairy fairy. So it's so interesting. I'm sorry about that side tangent, but um, I find it so interesting how people don't tell anybody, and then when they do, they tend to be called crazy. In even though like they were like, well, I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want to be labeled crazy. You know what I mean?
Right.
But is that something that this gentleman faced when he told the story at all?
I believe because he was very careful about who he talked to, he
Yep.
didn't experience a lot of ridicule, but he didn't advertise it, probably for that reason. He talked to, I believe, his wife, and then he talked to the researcher that worked with Betty and Barney Hill, because he knew that, okay, this is something weird, not normal for our world, and that person obviously had experience with that. I don't think he told too many other people. And I believe it was through the researcher how it got out into kind of the media. I don't think he was looking for attention on it at all.
Okay. All right.
And
And
I believe there's been other similar sightings of similar creatures throughout Derry over the years and the kind of local area. And there's been a ton of UFO sightings. So if it was an ET, it's logical to think that this thing may have come from one of those crafts that's been spotted over the
yeah,
years.
yeah. I heard somebody say, I think it might have been Nomar when I was listening to your guys' episode. I think he likened it to like the Hopkinsville goblins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Hopkinsville goblins are depicted as green, but the people that experience it are like it's a little gray, silvery looking thing, and you just said that it was gray. So I
Yeah,
was
I
just
believe
wondering
it
if
was described as gray and wrinkly, and the drawings that you can find if you Google it, it kind of reminds you a little bit of ET, a little bit combined with, I don't know, like some sort of Muppet.
um what is that movie from back in the day where it was like a little, it wasn't ET, but it was a little alien, and they were at like a campground or whatever, and
Oh, Meatballs? I
yes,
think you're talking
meatballs.
about
There we
one of the
go.
Meatballs movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that every time I hear like when I heard this story and whenever I hear the Hopkinsville goblins, like that's what I associate them looking like is the alien from Meatballs.
Yeah, just add some floppy ears, and I think it's pretty similar.
and turn it gray because I think it's brown. I think he's brown,
Yeah,
or
I don't
something like
remember.
that.
It's been a while since I've seen that.
Um,
This is Tracy.
This is Samantha.
This is The Suspended Sentence.
Grab your latte and join us as we enter season 2, starting January 1st of 2024.
A year packed full of serial killers that you may or may not have ever heard of.
Thanks for being there.
Stay safe.
so you had like a recovered memory, correct, about an experience you had with your father as well?
Yeah, so interestingly, so where the man who spotted the Derry Fairy lived, it was very near a place called the Robert Frost Farm in Derry. Obviously, Robert Frost, many people know, is the very famous poet. He lived for a time on this farm in my hometown, and I lived about 2 miles down the road for the first half of my youth. And when I was very young, so for a very long time, the only part I remembered was being in the car with my dad at night, driving home. We were driving south on Route 28, heading towards the Wyndham town line. And as we were going up a hill, there was a green glow coming from the other side of the hill. And even at a very young age, I knew that wasn't normal. To this day, there's no traffic lights in this area, so it couldn't have been a traffic light. But it was a strange green glow. And being sensitive, even at that young age, I sensed my father's fear. He had me hide behind the seat of his car, like I was crouched behind his seat on the floor of the car, because it made him nervous. And so it made me nervous because, okay, why, my dad, he's scared. That makes me scared. And for a very long time, that was all I remembered, is just going up this hill. There was a green glow on the other side, and I wasn't sure what was on the other side. And I wrote it off as a dream for a good portion of my life until I got involved with the KIT Research Initiative, which is the paranormal group that I investigated with. And we also had a team medium, and one of our investigators, you may know Mike Stevens through NOMAR, but Mike Stevens is an abductee experiencer. And so through meeting him and learning his story, and then working with other people and hearing their UFO and ET encounters, I started to think, it's kind of weird that I remember this dream so vividly for so long. I was at this point, well into my 30s. I'm like, this is a very vivid memory for me. And it just seemed weird. And then people started talking about green lights, and somebody else triggered a memory when they talked about a Michelin Man type ET. And I went, why does that feel familiar to me? I also would experience a lot of anxiety whenever I was riding at night in the fog when I would approach a traffic light, because you know how the traffic lights will just light up the fog. If it was green and I was driving towards that, I would have anxiety. And it took me a while to understand why that would create anxiety in me, until I realized, okay, it's from this memory that I have. And another piece of the puzzle came, I should backtrack a little bit. So my father passed away in 1997, and that was prior to joining the investigative group or ever having any thought that this was anything other than a dream. So I couldn't ask him about it. But we had a researcher come into one of our discussion groups one time. It was a UFO discussion group. And he was a local researcher, and he had a map of hotspots for UFO activity in the area. And he's, doing his thing. He's showing this map, and he points to Route 28 in Derry near the Wyndham line. And I went, what? That's a hot spot? Okay, that's interesting. And I still wasn't telling anybody really about this, but I'm like, okay, there's too many things telling me that there's something more to this. And the real kind of final push for me to believe it was more than a dream came when I've worked at this point for many years with the team medium that we had to develop my own intuition. And one thing that meant a lot to me was connecting with my father spiritually. And so when I felt comfortable connecting with him, feeling like I could trust the information that was coming through, I asked him about this incident, and he refused to talk to me about it. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because if it was a dream, he would say it was just a dream. If it was nothing, he would say, I don't know what you're talking about. But he shut down. And that to me told me it was something. And
Absolutely.
that was when I decided I needed to do a regression, a hypnotic regression, to learn more about what happened. And it probably took me a couple years before I actually had the regression. But I did end up doing it, and I was able to discover what I encountered on the other side. Do you want me to keep going?
Absolutely, please do.
No cliffhangers today. So in the regression, I was brought back to the car, and we went over the hill. And what we encountered was a craft had landed on the road. And there were also 2 police cars and some policemen. And we stopped our car and got out. Even though my dad was afraid, he was more curious than he was fearful. So we got out of the car and started to approach the craft. And I remember in the regression, I could see the cops trying to wave us away, but I couldn't hear them. It was like there was a bubble around us, keeping us from being able to hear them. And we were brought on board the craft. I didn't see how we got on board it. It is what was causing the green glow. It had kind of a metal dome, and then underneath it was this green organic substance. It was nothing like any living organism on our planet, but it was alive, and it was very, very phosphorescent green. And that was the main portion of the craft, I believe. But it was all living pieces. And so we went inside, and that's it. In the regression, it took me a long time to see what I was seeing because I had no context for it at all ever in my life. And what I started to see kind of looked similar to like when you see videos of like a microscope going into a human heart, you can see the chambers and the veins and that sort of thing. It was very similar to that, but green still. And eventually the beings kind of, some of them, it's so hard to describe. I call them quantum ETs because it was basically every piece was a separate piece, but part of a whole, and they could act independently or they could act together in larger groups. And they approached us, and they were full of kindness and love and empathy, and they were fun. They teased us. They lifted me up and carried me around and, kind of played with me. And my dad eventually started crying because it was such a moving experience for him, because he was so afraid, but then realized, okay, this isn't a scary experience. But I believe it had to do with the fact that he and I are both empaths. Again, I never got to have the conversation with him. I didn't know the term empath until after he had passed away, but everything I know about him and who he was in life and now connecting with him in death, he was definitely an empath, which is just a very highly sensitive person. And I believe they put in motion things for us, for our paths in life. My dad's motto was, I can't remember who the quote originates from, but it's something like, there are 3 rules to life: be kind, and be kind. That was my dad.
Okay.
And I had a bit of a tougher time, but I believe that they gifted me with different markers that I would find along the way as I grew up to put me on the path to helping other empaths, to understanding what it means, and to then go on to working with other empaths. And it was interesting because when I started to come out of the regression, my father had joined me in spirit form in the regression, and he apologized to me before I completely came out of the regression, because even though he had a beautiful experience, he was still an adult, and he knew you don't talk about this stuff. Like we were talking about before with the fear of ridicule. He knew you don't talk about this. So as we were driving away from the craft after we were released or whatever, I knew he didn't want to talk about it, and we never talked about it. And eventually it kind of faded into what it was for many years, just what I thought as a dream. And he apologized to me in spirit form, to the adult that I was when I did the regression, for not seeing the experience for what it was and not being able to talk about it, which was nice. But at the same time, I believe that everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. So I don't know that talking about it would have done either of us any good. So that's my crazy story in a nutshell.
That's a pretty interesting story, I will say that.
Thank you.
And they just like had you come on and just played around with you and.
Well, I believe they were doing work to me energetically, but I think they were doing it in a way that wasn't scary for me.
That makes sense. And do you think that maybe your dad is like a spirit guide now, or did he just come to because he knew you were in that state?
He's not a spirit guide for me, but he is for my daughter. I have a now 21-year-old daughter. But
wow, you do not look that old. I'll say that.
Thank you. I was not a teenage mother, I promise. Not that there's anything wrong with being a teenage mother, but I'm proud of, looking young and not being young. Anyway, I was, learning how to use my intuition and connect with spirits when my daughter was like elementary school age, was when I was first learning it all. And I did connect with him, but he was still very fatherly to me. And I didn't need a father at that point. I was an adult. And so I said, you know what, you can be a guide for your granddaughter. And that was easier for him, because he could be a little bit more removed, because for a guide, we need somebody that can have our best interests at heart and understand that sometimes that means going through tough times. Whereas as my dad, he just wanted to protect me from everything. It's like, I don't need that. So I had him, protect my daughter, and he's been with her ever since.
Beyond the Shadows podcast.
In the darkest corners of our universe lie spaces where even the light won't go.
Places where terror and the unknown lurk, always waiting.
Join Ryan and Scott on the Beyond the Shadows podcast as we pull back the curtain and peer into the darkness.
We'll examine hauntings, true crimes, mysteries, UFOs, exorcisms, reincarnations, mysteries, and all things dark.
Join us as we go Beyond the Shadows.
Now, is your daughter also empathic, or?
Yes.
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 Okay.
She's much less involved in like paranormal and that sort of thing than I am, but she's so intuitive. She can read people so quickly. So she utilizes it. She's learned how to manage it for herself. But yeah, she still kind of rolls her eyes at me with the ghost hunts and all that stuff.
Now, is this like your earliest memory of experiences? Is this UFO
I
and alien?
believe so. I definitely had paranormal encounters. I don't know if they were before or after that, but they definitely started at a very young age. I remember hearing somebody walking through our house and yelling to my mom, and she was like, just go back to sleep, there's nobody here. And I remember feeling somebody stroking my head when I'm in bed and things like that. And I would see and hear things all my life growing up. And it wasn't often enough that I really thought, oh, I'm a medium. It was just, oh, that's weird, that's kind of scary. you
Yeah.
know um but yeah, definitely a lifelong experiencer.
I am as well. It hasn't really stopped for me either. I've experienced some weird stuff, which I actually did a regression as well. But I'm sure everybody's probably sick and tired of listening to me talk about it. So after we're done recording, I'll tell you about it because it's gonna be in Nomar's revised book too.
Oh, then I've
Um,
probably read it because I helped edit that book, which is
oh
a
yeah, you
great
probably
book.
did. All right, I'll tell you then the mushroom people story.
Okay, refresh my
If
memory
you,
a little bit because that's a long book. I read a lot of stories.
it is a pretty big book. He sent me a story that was in there too. I read it and like what because him and I had been talking and I hadn't seen any of his books in like physical form at all, and I've only was looking at pictures of them. And so like he was saying like it's a bunch of little stories. So I was thinking like, a couple paragraphs for a story, like just these like really short stories. And I asked him about one story that I saw him post about on Instagram, and he sent me the story and I was like, "Holy crap, this is a lot." But it was about werewolves in a barn or something like that in up Maine
Yeah.
or something like that, but he wrote it really well. But yeah, so my experience was, used to wear glasses. Me and my sister were pretending to, hunt monsters out in the woods, and we used to do that all the time. And it was like a thin layer of snow on the ground, and we were tracking like squirrel tracks, and um, so we're walking through the woods and following these tracks, and it just like all of a sudden, like I could see like a blue tint through my eyes, like everything looked blue for like
Yeah,
a
I
quick
remember
second.
that story now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then it was a village of mushroom people.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I feel like that kind of, I don't know if I'm sure you know about like the multiverse
Yeah,
theory. Yeah, that
yeah,
it sounds something like that, like a slip of the worlds.
yeah, yeah. It was weird because I was just I was trying to there's things from my childhood that I was trying to heal from, and I was just making sure like there was nothing, like I was repressing or anything like that, and that's how I found it. And I had did which it kind of is a good memory in a way. Like it's weird, but it's good at the same time. Like I don't wear glasses anymore. I haven't wore glasses since that was the last time I ever had glasses on my face.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, and but then I had this other memory that wasn't so pleasant that came with it. So, but I've
Yeah.
did the shadow work for it and whatever
Hmm.
and all that, and I've healed, and I've actually found myself now in like the spiritual journey where I'm like extremely comfortable being alone, and it might be too comfortable, where I'm not really letting anybody in now, and
Yeah.
which is obviously another aspect that I have to work on. But it
Yep.
comes with the territory when you work on yourself. You gotta. It takes time. So
Absolutely. And speaking as a highly sensitive, introverted empath who's very comfortable being alone, I completely understand how that goes. I've been there. I've done the
yeah,
work. I'm continuing to do the work.
yeah. I just I go out on dates by myself. Like that's I
Mm-hmm.
go out and I go out to eat, or I'll go out for drinks. Like I don't even really the only people that I really talk to are the people that I have conversations with here. And then at work, and then it's my kids.
Yeah.
But so when well, yeah. So when did you realize that you had the mediumship ability?
So I learned I was an empath probably in around 2006 or 7, and
Okay.
started looking into it. And I knew that meant I was intuitive and sensitive, but it wasn't until I joined the KRI investigative group and started working with a medium and learning how to use my intuition. That was 2010, 2011. That was when I really started to understand that being an empath is intuition, because as an empath, I am feeling the energy of the world. Everything has energy, and
Mm.
empaths receive messages from that energy. And that's why we are susceptible to overwhelm, because everything has energy, and that's a lot of information coming at us at once. So we have to learn how to manage it and how to filter and figure out what messages we need and what can just, be discarded. And, so that does play into the mediumship, because some of that energy is dead people. And, that's, but that was the real struggle, was trying to figure out, well, where is the message coming from? And then trusting it. And there's so many unknowns in this field that I still am like, well, I think I'm talking to a dead person, but I'm not entirely sure, because how do you really know?
Right. How do you know? Um, do you have you ever found yourself like overwhelmed with like information when once you were like started honing in on like your ability?
um, it actually got better at that point. The overwhelm would come, you know, when I would be out in crowds, when I was, at a school function for my daughter, with so many people and so much noise and a lot going on, that's when the overwhelm would happen. Or, if I was unhealthy, say I'm just run down, I'm getting a cold, and, there's craziness at work, overwhelm comes then. But once I
Yeah.
learned how to hone it and understand it and manage it, it's gotten a lot better.
Okay. All right. Um, do you have any like scary or creepy experiences that you were like maybe I want to run, or maybe you did run, or something like that? Anything like that?
I've never run. I try really hard to face my fears.
Yeah.
um, I would say one of the scariest moments happened at a place here in Portsmouth called the Button Factory. And it used to be a mattress button factory. So that's why it's called the Button Factory. But it's now artist lofts. And we were able to get in there to investigate. We'd heard stories of you know, shadows and sounds and weird things happening. But because it's such a large structure, we only were able to investigate the bottom floor when we went in. And as we were setting up before the camera was rolling, the first thing that happened was myself and one of the other investigators saw a person walk out of one of the rooms and go down the hall. And everybody on the team was in the hallway. So there were no other people in the building, or there shouldn't have been, to walk out of this doorway and go down the hall. So myself and the other investigator go chasing after this person. We're like, who is this? There's not supposed to be anybody here. And they went into a big, one of the big wood shops at the end of the hall, took a left turn and vanished. And there was nowhere for them to go. There was no windows that could have been opened. There was no doors. They just vanished. So it was a full-bodied apparition. My first time clearly seeing, that I know of, clearly seeing a full figure that another person witnessed. You know, there were two of us that saw this man. And so later on, when we started investigating, I was current at that time training with the team medium to learn how to use my intuition on investigations. And she said, hey, do you guys want to try an experiment? Because there was a couple of us working with her that night. And sure, why not? And just let me preface this by saying I have complete trust in this woman, or I would not have participated in this, because this is very, very creepy to me. So there was the man that we saw walk down the hall, we think was a man haunting the building who was some years back a prominent figure in the community, but he enjoyed mutilating women, apparently. And apparently he did this at this site. We were never able to verify it historically. You know, chances are if somebody like that existed, it would have been covered up pretty well. You know, because he apparently was a person of prominence and money. So he probably could have covered up any records of anything like that happening. So she had each of us separately. So I went first and the other two didn't know what was happening. She had me pretend to be a victim. So I went into the room where she felt the most energy from this man. And I laid down on the floor and pretended to be, you know, vulnerable for him. And I felt somebody touching me in places he did not have permission to touch me in. And it was really, really bizarre. And she had said, you know, when you want it to stop, you tell me and I will make him stop. And it got to the point where I'm like, no, this is not cool. And she's made him stop. And the other two training mediums did the same thing, and they also experienced the same thing. You know, that was pretty darn creepy. When you feel somebody touching you inappropriately and there's nobody there, it's really, really weird. I mean, it was like fingers but not fingers. It was so strange. That's probably the weirdest thing I've experienced.
Yeah, that's creepy. Hey man, stop making so much noise over there. But sorry, my dog. I don't know if you can hear that, but hey,
no.
Hey, stop! You're kicking stuff over here. But no, that is, oh my goodness, that is, I feel violated just listening to the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, I mean, you know, that I can't imagine going into that situation without a medium that I trusted, you know,
right?
Because he probably did go around touching people and they had no idea what was happening to them.
Right.
I can only imagine.
And that's at the button factory in Portsmouth.
Yes, he's no longer there. We removed him.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad you... Stop. I'm glad he's he's out of there, like, because
yeah,
that's no bueno, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I wouldn't
imagine
want to leave somebody like that behind.
no. You don't want a real person doing stuff like that, let alone somebody you can't stop, like a normal
Right.
person that can't stop it. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. I was early in my training. I wouldn't have known how to stop him from doing that if I had
Yeah.
wanted to without her there. So,
Right. Right. Um, so what was it that like was it all your experiences that that led you to start doing investigations, or were you
it was
just
actually my books. I had gotten rejected by a publisher for my first book.
Oh, okay.
He said, or the response from the publisher was that my story needed more bite. And so I was like, all right, I'm writing about ghosts. I guess if I want more bite, I need more actual ghost experience. And,
Mm-hmm.
the way to do that at the time was joining an investigative team. So that's what I did. I joined an investigative team. And it just so happened that they had this team medium. They had Mike Stevens, the UFO researcher and abductee, and the the head of the group. His name is Andy Kitt. Um, he's a science-minded person who enjoys researching this kind of thing. And so they started doing classes and lectures and groups in all these weird things that go on in our world, and it just opened up a whole new life for me. It was down the rabbit hole when you find there's about 10,000 more rabbit holes down there.
That's funny. I so when I started this podcast, I had never had the intention of doing any kind of like investigative anything, and I ended up becoming really close with a paranormal group, their husband and wife, and actually that's two groups that are both husband and wives. Um, and then together they're a part of a bigger group. But anyways, my kids and I went on vacation down there, and they invited me on an investigation, and I did an Estes. And in the video, one of the guys tells Spirit to touch me on the shoulder, and then I felt somebody squeezing my shoulder. And so that like after that I was like in all the like the stuff that I got through the Estes and stuff, that kind of like I didn't answer every question that they were asking, but some like it was pretty interesting, and now I'm like hooked, you know what I mean? Like now I want to do it. I
Yeah.
actually literally just bought a spirit box the other day, and I'm waiting for it to come in the mail. um so I want to do stuff like that now.
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
mean,
interesting.
when you experience things like that, it's like, how could you not want to know more? Feeling
Yeah.
a disembodied hand touch you, I had an experience when I was a teenager where I was home all alone. There was nobody else home. It was just, I had a brother and my parents. Everybody was out. And I was on the lower level of the house in my dad's office on the computer, and there was a staircase on the other side of the wall that the desk was on. And I heard what sounded like my brother come running down the stairs. It was a sound I knew well. He did it all the time. Every time he left the house to come down the stairs, that was a sound that he made. But I was there alone, and I freaked out. I was probably 15 or 16 at the time. I freaked out because I'm like, there's nobody here. Who's running down the stairs? It wasn't like the stairs creaking. It was heavy footsteps going down the stairs. And thankfully there was a fireplace in my dad's office. I grabbed the fireplace poker and I walked around the house like, who is here? And there was nobody home. No idea what that was. That was scary. But I wanted to know more. I wanted to know.
Yeah, I want to know. I mean, we're not gonna have all of the answers, obviously,
No.
but like I think it's fun to, you know, speak to them and give them kind of some like interaction. Although not all of them are pleasant, obviously, as
True.
you just the story you just told, we know that. Um, but yeah, no, I think I think it's fun, and I think it's a good way to get out of the house too and not do like the normal like weird things, which I don't know. I like doing changing it up every once in a while, but like I also went on investigation with a gentleman named Phil in the Huckamuck Swamp and the Bridgewater Triangle down in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah.
That was interesting. We got
Ugh, that's a
interesting
nasty
responses.
place.
Yeah, we got interesting responses on the spirit box. They said my name, that I'm part Native American, Penobscot, up here in Maine, and the area, the Bridgewater Triangle, is Wampanoag, is the Wampanoag tribe, and through Spirit Box, my tribe comes up and everything, and I was just like, that's weird. Mainly because like if we're picking up radio stations, we're picking up on Massachusetts radio stations. Like where's Penobscot being mentioned out of randomly, um, and we pick it up, on Massachusetts
Yeah.
radio.
That's not a word you hear very often in general. So,
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then it started talking about portals and get out of the way because Bigfoot's coming. I was like, what the hell is happening? And I just threw a rock out into the middle of the wood, well, into the swamp, I guess. And Phil's like, hey, can you throw that back for us? And I'm just like, not in my head.
it's good to have boundaries, limits.
Uh, So that leads me into another question that I like to ask people. Have you ever
Mhm.
like had an experience that if you that you either know for a fact or maybe possibly could attribute it to any kind of cryptid?
Um, Potentially, yeah. We had a possible Bigfoot encounter actually twice. I encountered something very strange with a group of friends. We the first one we used to do just like a cryptid chat where you could come to the center that we had and just talk about your passion for Bigfoot. And we weren't getting a lot of people coming, so we're like, well, let's do a hike to a cabin up on the top of a mountain in New Hampshire and let's raffle off a spot to somebody that comes to our group. And only one person showed up. So they automatically won the raffle. But then they weren't able to join us on the hike. And so we were already there, that they couldn't make it. So we ended up doing this hike, just the 3 team members. So myself, 2 other team members, and one of the guys' daughters was with us. So we do this hike. It was a really tough hike. We were all horribly out of shape. So we huff and puff our way up to this cabin. We get up there and like it's a complete lark for us. We're not doing this in any serious way. There aren't Bigfoot sightings a lot in this area, but we're like, well, we're doing this, so let's do it. So we sat outside of this cabin after dark, and one of the guys had his wireless speaker, and he played over the wireless speaker a collection of supposed Bigfoot calls from all over the country. And it was in rotation, and he just played it. It was going for, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most. And then the energy shifted, and we all got really, really uncomfortable. And myself and the guy's daughter were like, we need to go to the bathroom, and it's an outhouse and it's way down. And we're like, I'm not going alone, so you come with me. So, we go trudging down there. We use the bathroom really fast, and then we come back, and nobody said anything about being uncomfortable. You could just kind of tell. But when we came back, both of the guys are like, something's off, right? The other one's like, yeah. Like, all right, let's go inside. Like, we were petrified. We go into this cabin and we bolt the door. And I'm like, you guys know that whatever's out there, this bolted door is not going to do anything for us, right? They're like, yes, but it makes us feel better. And so the The 2 other team members are both smokers, and they cannot go more than an hour and a half without a cigarette. But they went probably more than 2 hours. We sat in the cabin petrified of whatever shifted the energy out there. It was palpable. And to this day, we're not really sure what it was, but something made us feel very, very vulnerable. And then they both finally got desperate enough that they needed to go smoke, and they stepped outside and they go, it feels different. It feels okay. And I stepped out and I'm like, yep, that feeling's gone. Whatever that was, it's gone. But we still stayed in the cabin for the rest of the night. So that was the first one. That was weird. That was definitely weird. We attracted the attention of something.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, so there's another cabin not too far away from this, another hike up another mountain, similar region. And this one was a UFO excursion. And we did see a UFO while we were up there. But then after we went to bed, and it was just a light in the sky, it wasn't anything too crazy. But after we went to bed, I'm a really, really light sleeper, and I couldn't fall asleep. So I'm laying there in bed, listening to all the weird sounds, listening to people snoring. But then I hear one of the guys with us get up, and he turned the lamp on, and I could just tell something was wrong. And so I got up and I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, there's something outside my bunk. Cause it was like just a completely open cabin. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, just go in there. And I stepped into he was completely diagonal from where I was sleeping. And I go in there and I heard what sounded like a large, hairy animal rub up against the side of the cabin. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Something is out there. But we're thinking bear, moose, maybe even a big deer. Who knows? Like there was some woods right behind the cabin. So it could have been something walking back there. But the odd part was he had a trail cam in a tree on that side of the cabin. So if something was there, it should have triggered the trail cam. And nothing, there were no pictures on the trail cam the next day. So we don't know what that was. If it was an animal, it would have triggered the camera. There's no way it wouldn't have. So
Did you hear any kind of like growling or anything? Or
nope, just the sound of the body rubbing up against the wood.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And, he's not a person that gets nervous easily either, but it was whatever he heard, it was enough to make him uneasy.
I think it's interesting too that people that that they're not afraid of anything, or like they have like these like big boisterous personalities where nothing really gets under their skin, and then they have like an experience like this where it's a possible like especially with Bigfoot, and then they're instantly uneasy and they don't feel right about like the situation. And I don't know, do you know Alex Petikoff?
Oh yeah, I know him very well.
Yeah, so he was on the show not too long ago, and he was telling me that there's actual animals, like, because the infrasound that people talk about Bigfoot having, like it was considered woo woo, you know what I mean? And there's literal scientific evidence of animals like elephants and gorillas that have infrasound, like it's either elephants or gorillas that use it to mate. I think it's elephants that use it to mate. And I can't remember what the reason for the gorillas, but it's been substantiated that, that they have it. So the Bigfoot having the capability of infrasound is not out of the realm of possibility.
I absolutely believe it. Yeah, there's something to that. Something I forgot to mention, that the second cabin where we heard the animal or something rub up against the cabin, every time I went up there, we went up there multiple times. To go to the outhouse, it was through part of a field and then into the forest. Every single time I went out there, I felt like I was being watched, and it was very, very uncomfortable, and I could not stand it. And then I think on my third or fourth trip up there, I was hiking alone because the people I was with wanted to get there early and I just couldn't make my schedule work. So I ended up hiking up alone. And as I was hiking up, I was putting out the energy of, look, I am just here to hang out with my friends, to connect with nature, to connect with whoever here may want to talk with us. I do not mean any harm. I am, a kind person. I'm trying to do my best. And that's the energy I kept putting out as I walked up there. And that time, whenever I went to the outhouse, I did not feel that feeling a single time. And, you hear a lot of stories of Bigfoot. Some people say they're mean and they're after them and, they're intimidating. And other people are like, no, it was a peaceful interaction. And I think they can pick up on our energy and our intentions. And if they're not sure of our intentions, they're probably going to try to be intimidating. They're going to be protective of where they are because they don't know us, so I don't blame them. I'm super protective of my energy space too with people I don't know. So I get that they would be like that too.
Yes. Yeah, I get it too. And I feel like the rock throwing and the tree knocks are like get out of here kind of things, where
Yeah.
people will like they'll see the rock flying and they'll be like they'll try and find where it came from, or like they hear the tree knocks and they try and follow the sound, and then it just like the experience becomes worse when it seems like when they're trying to like investigate the sound of the tree knocks and where the rocks are coming from. So I think those are warnings, like you need to like get out of here kind of thing.
Yeah, could be. I have a different theory on the tree knocks that
Okay.
nobody else I have ever encountered has ever agreed with me. But that's okay. I like to be different. I think that the sound isn't a tree knock. I think it has something to do with them camouflaging or leaving or entering the dimension.
So you
I
think
think
it's like the
it's
sound of the portal opening?
something like that.
Okay. That's interesting because, well, because there's also like people who encounter like Dogman, they hear like a metal sound before they ever even like have their sighting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like either right after or it's a couple minutes or whatever, but they hear a metal sound like a metal door or gate or something along those lines that sounds like it's being opened, and then all of a sudden Dogman's there and they have this like crazy wild experience, and there's nothing out in these woods that could attribute to that sound. They're out in the middle of nowhere, or there's no doors, there's no buildings that have, obviously they're out in the woods, there's no buildings, but like there's nothing for this heavy metal sound. And I will say too, when I was in the Huckamuck Swamp, we actually heard that noise right before the spirit box told us that Bigfoot was there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna say I disagree with you. I can definitely see that, to be honest with you. So out
Yeah,
of all the stories that I
I don't have a
hear,
lot of experience to go on, but it's just it's a gut feeling that there's something more to that. It's not as simple as just a tree knock.
yeah, that makes sense to me. So I guess I'm not disagreeing with you, so maybe I'm
That's
the first
okay.
person to agree with you. um, yeah, I would love to. I want to see a Bigfoot because I want to like know that 100% without a doubt, even if it's only for me. Like I don't care to like be like, oh, like I need to take a picture. Like I can totally just see it and have the experience and then be okay within myself of knowing. Like I don't need to to share it. Like I'll obviously I'll share the story, but like you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
at the same time I'm kind of scared to have one. But I've been invited on a Wendigo hunt. Um, what do you have you ever heard any stories based off of a Wendigo?
I have not in this area. No.
No. Um, yeah, that so I guess it's like a lot of like the stories that I've heard in the area and up here in Maine anyway. It's like a lot of it is like Katahdin area,
Hmm.
like that 100 mile wilderness trail for the
Mm-hmm.
Um, Appala- Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
There where it's 100 miles of just pure wilderness and nothingness. But I would love to hike that trail someday because
Yeah,
there's
that'd be
also
cool.
stories of like wild men, which are just like people that decided to live in the woods.
Oh, I definitely believe those are out there.
Yeah, I believe that 100%
Yeah.
is out there as well. Um, now, have you ever had an experience, right, that you possibly could attribute to like some kind of like angel entity, I guess, like
I
where it's super
absolutely have
positive?
a great story for that.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. I'm Movie Miss, one of the co hosts of the great podcast about bad movies called Let's Talk Turkeys, where you'll find our format is a bit different than the other talking head programs you're used to. I'm a Gen Xer, my co host is a millennial, so we're usually on the same page, but we do occasionally agree to disagree, and we always have a good laugh. Join us as we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of cinema. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find quality podcasts.
Yeah. So, early on in my training as an intuitive, the medium that I worked with had an interesting situation come to her where a mother was worried about her daughter. Her daughter was about 16 years old, and she was very open intuitively and unfortunately liked to dabble in things that, maybe she shouldn't be dabbling in. And the mother was concerned that her daughter was possessed. And some of the symptoms were incoherence. The daughter had lost a ton of weight. She wasn't eating. She just seemed to be talking nonsense, didn't seem like herself. And so the medium said, yes, bring her in and I'll see what I can do. And this is not the first time the medium has worked on something like this. But she knew that situations like this can be challenging. So she asked several of us to help her. So there was the main medium, and then I think 3 others of us helping out, and we all had different jobs. My job was to hold the energy of the room that we were going to be in. And basically, I put up a protective, energetic barrier so she could work with this girl and find out what was going on with her. And if she did have another soul inside of her, safely remove it. And I'm very good with spaces, so it was a great job for me. I put up the energetic barrier, and when I did, I had 4 beings appear at the top of the room in each corner, and they were human, lion, angel things is the only way I can describe it. So kind of like head of a lion, body of a person, sort of, but still kind of a lion body. It was very weird, but they were very, very powerful, very strong. I've always said the only way I could describe them was they were everything. And I knew that they weren't dangerous, but I knew not to disrespect them. And so I just let them do their protective work. And they helped me hold the space. And throughout the time that the medium was working on the girl, I could hear pounding on the walls, like something or some things were trying to get in. And so every time I heard that, I would reinforce and check and make sure the lions are still there. And I am certain they were some type of angelic force. I don't think they've ever been anything that lived like we have. And that was a pretty cool experience. And the girl did have another soul inside of her that the medium was able to move along. So
good.
That was kind of crazy.
That is crazy, but cool at the same time.
Yes, I was very grateful to them for their help, because
yeah,
the situation was scary. This girl had gotten herself into something where she was in over her head, and she was very vulnerable, and we needed to protect the space. So they definitely helped me do that.
Good. Yeah. That's like one of those stories that where if I had experienced it, I would have been like, am I losing my mind? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Not like obviously I would have been like I would have believed what I'm seeing. I believe everything that I see, but like I would have been like nobody, like if I tell this story, like are people gonna look at me differently, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like just like my mushroom story. Like I didn't I didn't really tell anybody until I started doing this podcast, and um, that is such a cool freaking story. I will say that though. Like that is really cool that you had experience that. That's so cool.
Yeah, the crazy factor is definitely tough. When you do this kind of thing, you have to have a lot of faith in yourself. Not that
Absolutely.
you should believe everything blindly. You should always ask questions about what you're experiencing, but trust your gut. Trust what you feel inside. And, I spent a lot of my time being abused and bullied, by peers and by other adults in my life, and later on by partners and that sort of thing. And when I finally got out of that was when I was starting on this journey. And I was really trying to be okay with me. And being okay with me meant being okay with all this weird stuff and not letting people who doubt get to me. And for the most part, that's always been pretty easy. The only time I kind of struggled with it was more with the ET stuff. One of the reasons I didn't talk about it a lot when my daughter was younger, because I was divorced and I was concerned that it could reflect poorly on me or reflect poorly on her because of the crazy factor. Like, it's not so much with the ghost stuff anymore. Like, most people, will either believe that, ghosts exist, or are like, okay, whatever, you can believe whatever you want. There isn't the crazy factor with the ghosts as there is with the ET stuff. So I definitely kept quiet about that until my daughter was 18. And then I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about, my ex-husband coming after me, for being a crazy lady, which he took himself out of the picture long before that. But I still, just to be on the safe side, I waited until she was 18 before I really would talk about it. Because the crazy factor, You know, people can think I'm crazy. I don't care, but I don't want it impacting my kid.
Right. And it's wild to like tell that story. People think you crazy, and then just because of that story, they're like, you're unfit to raise a child just because of this story that you say that you believe that happened to you. Like that's wild to me. Like you can no longer like you're not, a fit mother or a fit father or whatever for your child just because you're telling the story.
Yeah, and I don't know how legit that is, but I didn't want to give anybody any ammunition, you know?
Right.
I
No, that
wasn't going
makes
to give
sense.
them the opportunity to try.
Right, right. And I don't know. It's just I've actually, I've heard stories of people who've experienced, UFO stuff and what it wasn't Betty and Barney Hill, but there was a UFO or abductee like kind of situation where they did get their kids taken away. So, I don't know
Yeah.
if it was because of like 100% of because of the stories, but still, like just to think about like that you make yourself sound crazy and then somebody finally is like, she can't give the kid to me because she did you hear the story she's telling? You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I hope that doesn't
it's
happen to anybody else ever.
oh man, this it's just it's a crazy world we live in. Not I find more comfort in paranormal experiences and stuff like now these days. Um,
Same.
I have shit.
I love knowing that we don't know everything.
Me too. Like every day is a learning experience and like talking to people like you and stuff like I always get like a different like aspect of something like number one like the tree nucks like I never associated that in my brain at all but now that you say that like it kind of sounds legit so like just everybody like has an aspect to uh in their stories of what they've experienced and they can kind of just like I don't know it's just it, I learn a little bit more about this alternate world, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
otherworldly
Nice
things.
shout out to Nomar.
So, but I really wanted to ask today, like, how did you get into, being a speaker or a presenter of, like what led along like I know you're researching all this stuff and everything. Did you just were like one day like I want to speak at an event or did just somebody ask you like what was that process like?
I got dragged into it kicking and screaming. It was never something I wanted to do. It was not something I ever thought I would enjoy doing. It all started with the paranormal group. We started doing lectures together, and then I
Mm-hmm.
started doing lectures on my own. The more comfortable I got with, myself as a writer and myself as an intuitive, the easier it became. And even though I consider myself very introverted, like when I start talking about this stuff, I can talk about it forever, whether it's the empath stuff or the paranormal, the UFOs, whatever. I can talk forever about this stuff. I can lecture on it. I can have a conversation on it. I just love talking about it. And that has made it so much easier. And being an empath, whenever I do a lecture, I always say, well, what would I want to hear if I was in the audience? How would I want it presented? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I try to give to the audience. And I think it comes across. I get good feedback from my
That's
lectures.
good.
So
That's good. So I will say that I am also an introvert, but this podcast has kind of made me a non-introvert, like, well, so more extroverted. Um, like when I have somebody here, um, I can talk, and I can talk about this weird stuff. I can tell my stories, exchange stories, and stuff like that. And basically, I feel like we're friends, kind of, and where in the real world, unless we're talking about stuff like this, I don't really talk to anybody. I'm more just reserved and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting, the similarities, just because, and it's based on these topics. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's very introverted to be that way, to not want to talk about the surface stuff, not want to have the small talk, to want to have the deeper conversations, whether it's paranormal or whatever. And, I think that's the misunderstanding about introverts. People think we're not friendly. And it's like, no, I'm just selective with who I talk to and what I talk about. I remember when my daughter was little, being at a field trip and hearing the other moms talking about the skirt and the sale that she got on the skirt, and oh my God, it's so cute. And I'm sitting there like, shoot me now. Please shoot me. Can I have a real conversation? But there was nobody to talk to. I didn't know how to talk to them about skirts and sales, and they didn't know how to talk to me about paranormal stuff. So we were both out of luck.
Yeah, I get a lot of like the sports and cars. Like that's what like people will bring up to me. Cause I mean, I guess that supposedly that's what all guys like, is just
That's the comfort
sports and
zone for
cars.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I know nothing about cars, like muscle car, like sports cars and stuff. Like they'll talk, like I've been talked to about like a certain kind of engine. I was like, dude, all I know is that you put oil in it and you take care of it and it runs. You know what I mean? Like that's it. And then like sports, the only sports that I follow is football. But people will always try and talk to me about all these sports. I go, oh yeah, that's crazy. Really.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about sports. Like I don't know. I don't want to talk about sports. I don't want to talk about cars. Like I'd prefer to talk about this stuff. I'd prefer to talk to somebody about what they think the meaning of life is. I'd rather talk to somebody about what they think is beyond the stars. I want to know if you believe that the possibility that the earth might be flat, like those, like and like any kind of conspiracy. I want to know if you've ever had a paranormal experience, and that's what brought me to this podcast.
Yeah. That's the thing about introverts. We may have fewer conversations with people, but we have deeper conversations with people and we connect more.
Absolutely.
It's just how it works.
Absolutely. So I really actually like asking people this question. I don't think I've asked the last couple of guests, but do you believe that the earth could possibly be flat?
I don't believe that to be the case. However, I do think that could be the reality for some people.
Okay.
My viewpoint is that we are all living in our own realities, and those realities are shaped by different things, and some people's realities are shaped by things way, way, way over there, and some people's realities are very similar to mine, and there's stuff over here. But I don't think that it feels way too diplomatic to say like that it's not untrue, but I think it's true for them, and I honor that it's true for them. And that's where I'm at with that. I don't make fun of people who believe in flat earth. If that's their truth and that's their reality, great, have fun with it. Thank God we don't have giant cats knocking everything off the planet. We'd all be in trouble.
Yeah, that's true. I don't believe it, but I don't not believe it. You know what I mean? Like, I find it to be one of the most interesting conspiracies that I've come across. Because I haven't been like just the stories, like, you got the Admiral Byrd back in, like, I think it was 1947 when he experienced what he experienced in Antarctica. I think it's interesting the reason that they say the sky is blue, like there's actually water up there, or maybe, I don't know. I've never been up there,
Yeah.
and I think, and it really all stems back to the conspiracy of the moon landing for me. That's where it started for me, because I was looking into that, and I was like, I think the moon landing might be freaking fake. You know what I mean? And then I just kind of fell into like this rabbit hole of the Earth is flat, and that was the reason that they did the fake moon landing. But I think if the moon landing was faked, I think it was faked to say that there is an outer space, or that,
Interesting.
or whatever. I don't know. There's
So I
so
have
many
a
reasons
friend.
that it could be.
Yeah. I have a friend who's very well versed in his mind in all things conspiracy. His name is Andy Kitt. He's the founder of our paranormal team.
Yeah.
He might be an interesting person for you to talk to sometime, although he can be hard to stop talking. But from what I've heard from him on that, my impression is that the moon landing that was shown on TV was fake, but we did eventually land on the moon.
Okay.
They just didn't show us that for whatever reason. And there's 1,000 other conspiracies on why they didn't show it to us, but
I haven't heard that. Now that's something that I'm definitely going to look into too. Huh. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Anyways, back to reality. Well, it's still reality, but back to this reality.
Yeah.
So what do you think that spirits, so like when you're encountering an entity, do you think they're human spirits? Do you think it's just trapped energy? Do you like, what are your thoughts on, like, they decided not to move on or whatever? What are your thoughts on all that?
So I'm at the point where I believe I've encountered a lot of different kinds of energy. I've, of course, encountered residual energy where it's just kind of an imprint left behind. I've encountered energy that, for everything I can learn, seems like it is the soul of a deceased human. They have information that they shouldn't have otherwise. They present themselves as a certain way. But I've also encountered things that are just energy forms. I've encountered things that people would consider demonic. I've encountered Dogman in energy form. I've encountered ETs in energy form. The way I work as an empath is feeling the energy the way I do. It's like I'm almost feeling the inside before I see the outside. So there was, when I was training with our medium, we were at a house in Western Massachusetts, and I was walking around with the medium, recording her do her walkthrough, and she encountered a little boy, what she thought was a little boy. And, my daughter was young at the time, and she's telling this sob story about this little boy. And I'm like, why am I not feeling empathy or even sympathy for this poor little boy who's saying he was abused and killed and his mother was terrible to him and yada yada? And I'm like, my intuition must just not be right, because I'm not feeling anything. Well, then the medium all of a sudden goes, oh, like, what, tell me what's happening. She's like, well, the little boy reached up, put one hand on my head, pulled me towards him, and bit my cheek. I'm like, what? Why'd he do that? And so she's doing her thing, and she basically finds out that it was a non-human entity disguising itself as a little boy. And that was when I first started to think, okay, maybe I was feeling this thing that wasn't a little child, but I'm thinking I'm wrong because I'm not feeling a little child, because she sees the outside first, the presentation that they want you to see. And then she has to go into what it actually is. Whereas I work the opposite. I get the visuals after I feel. So I feel like when I'm working, if I can feel into the truth of what I'm encountering, it cuts through a lot of that. Did that make any sense?
That made perfect sense to
Okay.
me. Hopefully everybody else is on the same page. But yeah, no, that made sense to me. That's really interesting. I think I'm on the same page as you with all that. I think I mean we're never gonna have 100% definitive answers, but there's definitely more to this afterwards. But what do you think about God damn it, what's the word? Resurrect? No, not resurrection. Reincarnation. There we go.
Well, I don't believe that. Okay. I believe that our soul lives in multiple forms, but I don't think it's necessarily like, I don't think that if I misbehave in this lifetime that I'm going to come back as like a spider in the next world, in the next life. I don't think that it works that way. Like we're being punished or rewarded, for each successive life. I think because from everything I've learned, that where the energy is not linear. Time doesn't exist over there. I've heard stories of people who've encountered themselves in another body in the checkout line at Target. They're like, you are me and I am you, and we're living different lives. Like it's the same soul, different life, but at the same exact time. I mentioned before that my father is a spirit guide for my daughter, but I believe he's also possibly reincarnated in her because
No way.
she has interests that he had. Like the weirdest story I can tell to make it seem legit is that the USS Albacore is in Portsmouth, and that's where I live, and that's where my daughter grew up. She went to preschool at 3 years old across the street from the Albacore, and she told me, "Mommy, I want to go there. I want to go on the submarine." Like, okay, that's weird, but it's like a $5 admission. I can afford that as a single mom, so I take her on it. She loves the smell of like the inside of boats like that, like the metal boats like that. Like since she was a little kid. And that was my dad's thing. He was in the Navy. He would take us to Battleship Cove on, down in Fall River, Massachusetts. We'd tour the battleships and all that. And like, he was fascinated with that kind of thing. And here she is, 3 years old. I've never, ever talked to her about it. I've never exposed her to it. And she's asking for this and then expressing a love of it. It was just too strange. So made me think at least a piece of him is inside of her.
Yeah, maybe it's anything's possible. Yeah. So I guess kind of like to start wrapping it up here. Do you have any advice for people who are trying to start writing? Like any kind of advice for aspiring writers?
Definitely just write and write and write and write. Just get the story out. Don't worry about perfecting it until you have the story out. Because so many writers start to write and then go back and start editing before they move on to chapter 2. And then they get so caught up in the editing that they never move forward. So you just got to get the story out and then worry about fixing it later. Read as much as you can, because reading good writing helps you write good writing. And those are probably the two best pieces of advice. And, like me, if you're writing about ghost stories, go out and live what you're writing about, because that's the best way to write well.
Nice. That's good advice, I think. And now, do you have any advice for somebody who that's empathic, that might have like the mediumship ability, and but they're not 100% sure? Any kind of advice to help them like kind of like crack the nutshell per se?
Yeah, the first place to start is just go onto an internet search and look for 30 traits of an empath. It's going to be on a bunch of different blogs and articles, but it's all the same traits. Read through those and see how many resonate with you. They say that the first 10 will likely resonate with every empath, and then after that, it'll be some will resonate, some won't. I have found that it can change over the years as you come to understand yourself, but the 30 traits of an empath is pretty comprehensive and a great place to start understanding if you are an empath and, all the different ways it manifests in your life.
Nice. And so last question that I like to ask everybody, is, are you finding, fulfillment in, what you're doing, and with all of it, like all your research and your writing and everything? Are you finding fulfillment in your life?
1,000% I am. Yes, it is my sole purpose. I believe that with every fiber of my being. When I do an empath gathering, I always talk to other empaths about finding things that makes your soul sing, and doing this stuff, talking about it, researching it, experiencing it, are things that make my soul sing.
Awesome. I love that. And it's been so nice speaking with you. I have to ask you, do you have do you have an event that you're speaking at anytime soon in the near future?
I don't have anything lined up right now, but I'm going to be hopefully start looking into that, because it all sneaks up on me so fast. If I don't do it now, it'll be over and I'll miss it. So I'm hoping to speak at a couple libraries or a couple of parafests or something like that throughout the coming year.
Yeah, I'd love to attend one sometime. I absolutely enjoyed listening to you talk tonight. So like
Thank you.
I'm very and all the stuff that you sent me, like you're a fascinating person, and I'm very interested in hearing something that you have to present for like a speaking event. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Do you have anything that you want to plug, like anything that you want people to follow or anything like that? Any kind of social media or anything?
Yeah, the best place to follow me and engage with me right now is on Facebook. I'm under Valerie Lofaso, author and empathic medium. I post all of my events. When I do lectures, they'll be on there. I have my empath groups I post on there. And then I like to post articles and, fun stuff, paranormal things all the time. So all the weird stuff comes up on there. So that's the best place to find me.
Perfect. Well, guys, that is the show. You can check out Valerie's books on Amazon or wherever you find books, as she stated at the beginning of this episode. And go check her out on Facebook. But other than that, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Leave a 5-star rating. But I'm just kidding. You don't have to leave a 5-star. Leave whatever you think is deserved of the show. I would appreciate also a review. That would really help the show grow. But you can also leave a star rating and a review on the website as well. You don't have to use the podcast. That's kind of like goes for if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube. So that's where the weird ones are, podcast.com. If you haven't heard me talk about it the 100 other times that I have, that's it. And you can get to the merch store through there. And other than that, I hope you have a good day or good night, whatever time you have decided to listen to this. And Valerie, I 100% appreciate you taking the time to come on tonight. It's been a pleasure. Because time is the most important currency that we have right now, and the fact that you chose to spend this hour and a half with me means a lot to me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's been great.
All right, guys. Question everything and stay weird.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish.